Hi, thank you for joining me for my presentation today. My discussion will be about the importance of diverse representation in stories, in particular children's stories. This is a topic that is very close to my heart, and it's pretty much the reason why I started writing. I've written and published 2 stories of my own, My Muslim Mate and Why Does Mum Wear a Hijab, in the hope that children like my own, growing up in Australia with different cultural backgrounds and different religious beliefs, can grow up with confidence and feel empowered in being different and being the same and whatever we choose to be. And I think it's important for children to see themselves in stories, and we'll talk about the reasons why. So just quickly, before we begin, I'd like you to take a step back and think about yourselves when you were growing up. Think about the books that you read, the characters that you grew up with and loved, the stories that you'd open up and maybe sleep to. Think about reading in school and the characters that you came across, and the characters that you analysed when you were in high school, and all through, growing up as a teenager and now as an adult. What kind of books, what kind of characters did you come across? We're very fortunate now that books have become a lot more diverse than they were in the past. But in the past, they were very white and they were very one-sided, one point of view. And especially children's books, you'd always get the same sort of blonde-haired, blue-eyed, white child on the front cover and throughout the pages. And this was really pushing the narrative. And now Own Voices has started, and people like myself with diverse backgrounds or different beliefs, different religious beliefs or customs and traditions, we've started to take on the narrative and say, this is my story. I've lived this experience, and now I want to share it with the world. And this is what I feel like I'm doing at the moment. And the more I delve into it, the more I want to express and write and envision a future where characters like myself, Muslim women or Muslim children, will just be, just another character in the book, and doesn't necessarily have to be the main focus of the book or singled out in any such way. They can sort of be in the background. They don't have to be overtly involved in the story. And I have seen this happening a few times now, where I've opened up a book and it is about, diversity and things like that, or maybe friendship even, and there's characters in the back that, don't really drive the story forward, but they're there. They're visually there, and children get to see this as they're reading, as they're flicking through the pages. And this is really, in essence, what diverse representation is. It's not necessarily making it always the main character has to have this diverse background or diverse identity or personality. It's just about making everybody be able to see themselves in a story in one way or another. Now, one of the main things that I've come across is this notion of seeing or using books as mirrors as well as windows. So it's important that we get to see ourselves reflected in the stories that we read. So, for example, for myself, I'm an adult now, but when I see books like this, they excite me, because growing up, I didn't see books like this. There were no books like this at my school, even though I went to an Islamic school. Books like this in the library, none. So that's something that I'm really excited about, for my children to see other characters that look like them. And it's funny because, my son, who's 8 now, I know that whenever he sees we're out and about and he'll see somebody with a headscarf on, he'll yell and scream, and, oh, it's a Muslim, it's a Muslim. And it's kind of that, it's that representation that he feels he knows what she likes and he knows what she does, and she must pray like me and she must eat and celebrate what I celebrate. So it's that, link that just because somebody represents themselves in a particular way, we can then associate with them. And so when you see stories like this, for example, this is a book about feelings, and feelings are, something universal, whether you're black, white, orange or blue. Sadness is sadness, And so for me, when I came across this book, it just was a regular book teaching children emotions, and you can see it's a lift the flap book, so it's very interactive. And then I just, kept flicking through. And then when I came across this page here, which is about a little boy named Muhammad, that was really exciting for me, because my son's name is Muhammad, and to see a book with his name in it was really exciting. And it's a completely non-religious book. It's got nothing to do with faith or culture or customs or anything like that. It's just a human emotion book, and it teaches us about how we feel, and to be so inclusive. And as you can see, it's so diverse on the front cover. I think this is a step forward, and it's fantastic to see. So it does allow children from diverse backgrounds, as you can see, to sort of look at this book and feel mirrored by it. You know, and as you can see, it's got big bold faces, so it's really, really suitable for the age group. And so when they see themselves, it then leads to other feelings of empowerment, of representation, of I belong, I fit in, I'm not alone. Especially when you're growing up, identity is a huge part of, you know, sort of developmental stages. And who am I? Where do I fit in? Who's my group? Where do I belong? And, you know, I just watched the finale or the semi-finals for MasterChef, and one of the contestants talked a little bit about his immigrant experience and how, you know, they said that it's really wonderful for you to see, to sort of show up and tell your story and allow other people who might be like you, also immigrants who've come from overseas and decided to call Australia home, to see the success that you've accomplished and achieved. It's a wonderful testament to, you know, the ability and the welcoming attributes we have as society. And so representation, not only in books but across all media, is important. But we'll focus mostly today on books. So yeah, so representation is important. Again, like I said, as a way of for us to see ourselves in the books that we read, for us to see our lives represented in the books that we read. And again, it's important for authors and writers to make sure that they're writing from either a well-researched perspective or a lived experience. So I wouldn't go and write about, you know, life as a, I don't know, person who's come, you know, from overseas and who's struggled with the immigration and migration experience, because I'm not a migrant, I'm not an immigrant. I didn't experience that firsthand. However, if I was to go and start to do that, because I know the impacts of immigration, I've lived through my family, I've seen what they've gone through, and I've listened to their stories, I will definitely go about, you know, researching it and talking to more people, and doing this in terms of recording and researching and really respecting their stories, and not necessarily telling it my way, but telling it through their eyes. And so it's really important for that as well, for writers to be respectful of the books they write and the stories they wish to tell and the characters they hope to portray. So in saying that, it's also we've touched a little bit about books being mirrors. I'd like to talk about a little bit of books becoming windows into the world of people that we're not accustomed to. So if I might, you know, read a book that, you know, talks a little bit about a different faith or a different culture, then it's allowing me sometimes visual representation. So for example, a book like this here called Who Believes What? It's a very basic introduction to different faiths around the world, and you can see through the pictures just really beautiful interactions of people from different faiths, a little bit of explanation as to what the pictures represent. And, you know, it's just a beautiful, beautiful book that celebrates the religions and talks a little bit about the differences, just with beautiful pictures and beautiful illustrations, and makes it really accessible. And I think books like this, you know, what age is it for? That you often get asked, especially when you've written a book and you've published and all of that. But I think these sorts of books really transcend that. And like I was saying earlier, when we think back to the books that we were reading as children, as teenagers, these sorts of books were really hard to come by. And so for me, even as an adult, you know, to pick this up and just the visuals, the basic information, it makes the information really easy to read and understand. And it's just a window into the lives of people who are different to myself. Now, when I say the word different, it often it holds this negative connotation, but different is not necessarily a bad thing when we learn to celebrate it. So it's okay for us to be different. It's just that we need to learn to accept the differences and use them and celebrate them and move forward with them. It's great to be similar, you know, especially when you're going to something like the footy. You want to find your group because you both, you know, you go for the same team and you want to cheer and support with one another. But, you know, it's also important to know that we are individuals, and that's absolutely fine to represent that. And so in speaking about mirrors and windows, there's a huge push for writing books to allow us to become more respectful of one another. We need to learn to respect each other's traditions, each other's values, each other's cultures and religions and foods and music and customs and all of these sorts of things. So when we grow up with these environments, we learn to feel less isolated. We learn to feel empowered through the books and the stories we read and we tell ourselves and we tell our children in particular. So these books allow us to do that. And diversity and representation and inclusion and all these words that are coming up now, which is fantastic, are so crucial to the upbringing of our children and for their future. So a few months ago, well, actually it's been a year now, the lovely Stella, a local, she brought this book over to the library, and we were there for one of her book readings. And so this is a book about grandmothers. Again, it's just a very simple book talking a little bit about different cultures and different grandmothers, and you can see different flags from different parts of the world. There go my papers. And you can see that, you know, different days of the week are spoken about, different foods, different customs, different cultures, but the common link is that it's the grandmother. You know, what is the yaya? It's the grandmother, and the love of the grandmother, and that connection with the grandmother, and primarily the connection of food with the grandmother. So these are all things that connect us as human beings. So these sorts of stories are really empowering too, because when children see themselves represented in books like this, again, they learn to feel proud of who they are. And they can do the whole, oh, that's me, you know, that's me too. Again, it mirrors their life and it mirrors their identities, and they feel empowered by that. There's also, you know, books that are bilingual. Books that are bilingual also help to teach children that it's okay to speak another language. I know I'm trying to teach my boys Arabic, and it's very, very difficult. So, you know, if we can teach them to be proud of having another language, or proud of having a different faith, or, you know, proud of wearing different clothes. These are things that will go a long way to building a more harmonious and a more peaceful and accepting society. And I think it does definitely start at home. So whether it's we're reading books to our children and discussing the topics in these books, I think that's a great way to start, and it's a great place to start within the home, because you're not treading on anyone's toes. You know, you've got this book. You'd hope that the author's taken all the necessary precautions to make sure that it's a well-rounded book, it's a culturally sensitive book, the information in that book is correct, and they've presented it in a way that appeals to you and your family. And so when you pick up a book like this and you read this with your children and you read it as a family, you know that you're gaining more information about a different way of life, and that you're moving forward in learning to be more tolerant, and in learning to be more accepting of those people who are around you who might be a little bit different. So it says, I've got some notes here that I just wanted to read out. Representation matters for readers without marginalised experiences to introduce them to other perspectives and other worldviews, to teach readers that the world is far richer than their experiences alone. So again, we might be very fortunate in a country like Australia where we haven't necessarily gone through war and famine and all of that sort of thing firsthand, but people have, and it's important to read stories like that, to know that, you know, so that we don't live in a sort of a shell or a bubble, and we don't realize what's out there. And stories are a great way to connect us. And these days we are very connected with social media and the internet and the like, but books are, you know, they are a way of transporting us to a different time, a different place, a different experience. And it allows us to view the world from a different perspective, from the comfort of our own home, you know, whether it's in our bed before we sleep, or from the couch, you know, by the heater, or whatever it might be. I've also got a note here that says, I think it's Wunat Diaz, he famously said, if you want to make a human being into a monster, deny them at the cultural level any reflection of themselves. So it's this idea that when we see ourselves represented, we do feel empowered, and we feel a sense of pride again in our identity. Now, when I think back to myself growing up, I still get asked, were you born here? And then I have to talk about my family coming from Lebanon, and because what is your background, or where did you come from? These questions are asked all the time. And so, you go on this whole journey back to when your parents came from Lebanon, and, but my parents were really young and they got married in this country. You're trying to constantly validate and justify how Australian you are, and so if I didn't have a sense of pride in who I was, especially growing up as a kid or as a teenager, it's going to make me feel that my background isn't valid. It's not why, I should want more, I should want differently. But when I've grown up and I've read books that reiterate it's okay to be Muslim, it's okay to be covered, it's okay to be Christian, Jewish, boy, girl, it doesn't matter what you're reading, but when the children are seeing themselves in these books, they become confident in themselves. And so, books that talk about your faith, or books that talk about representation, or books that are diverse with multiple characters from different backgrounds, different orientation, different religion, different customs and culture. These books drive forward the notion of acceptance and the notion of tolerance. And again, like I said earlier, it helps us to bridge these gaps and helps us to create a more tolerant and a more peaceful society. So I've also written here, basically it's a way of walking in another person's shoes. So when you read somebody else's story, you see their point of view, you understand what life is like for them, or what their experiences have been through. We learn different ways of loving, we learn different ways of laughing, we learn different foods that people eat. There's so many things that we can learn. And I've also thought about the notion of using, animals in our books. And we use animals, I think, to teach a universal truth, really. So whether it's a book about kindness or compassion or whatever it might be, using animals really makes it accessible to everybody across the board, because animals don't have a nationality. I mean, they kind of do if you want to talk about indigenous animals and indigenous plants. So an Australian book might touch on like a koala as the main character, as opposed to using something like a wild snake from the Amazon. So those sorts of books, they are more accessible to everybody. So something like this book, The Same But Different Too, it's an exploration of being different and being the same, and it's all okay. So it's a little bit of a book about opposites, and you can see they've used humans in the book as well as animals. So topics that are quite broad. They do touch on a lot of topics for children. These are great ways to keep them diverse and to make sure that our children are represented in whatever we choose to, depict and write about. And in the future, I do believe that books will be more diverse than they have ever been in the past. And I know from my personal experience as a writer, I've looked at submission requests, and a lot of publishers talk about the importance of diversity and the importance of own voice and the importance of inclusion, and that they're looking for books that tick all these boxes. And so hopefully we will see more books out there. We will see more books with diverse characters who are sort of part of minority groups and feel represented in the characters and feel represented in the stories that are being written about. And allow our children and the future to have this empathy and understanding that we so much, we need it so much now more than ever. We need to learn how to be empathetic. We need to learn how to open our arms and say, it is okay to be different. It's great if we're the same. It's just about how we as people react to it. Whether I choose to accept or reject is my decision. I should want or need anybody to change so that I can accept them. It's all within ourselves. And I think books are a fantastic place to start. And like I say, it's not necessarily, that we need to write books about faith to show people from faith in those books. We can write about anything, just like this book here, which is a book about feelings and includes people and children in particular from all walks of life, with darker skin, with curly hair, with straight hair, with happy faces and sad faces, and really just humanizes the human experience and makes it accessible to everybody. I think that's pretty much the crux of what I wanted to get through today, is that, the importance of diversity is there. We just need to learn to appreciate what we have and make sure that moving forward, we move forward with an open heart and an open mind, and really celebrate these books that represent people who are different to ourselves, whether it's from different countries or from different faiths, from different backgrounds. We are different, and we're the same, and that's all okay. And the important thing is that we learn to tolerate, accept, and celebrate that. I invite you to ask me any questions you like. You're more than welcome to email me at info@booksbyamal.com.au. And if you'd like to get in touch, please don't hesitate. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I look forward to hearing from you guys and your questions as soon as possible. Thank you. Bye.